from the city of Chicago, a city most recently known for its crime and violence. On this podcast, we will be sharing stories of redemption from individuals raised in the tough streets of Chicago and from around the country. Some of them were gang members, drug dealers, incarcerated, victims, and perpetrators of violence. Listen to my guests as they share their experiences, struggles, trauma, but also the strength, hope, faith, and perseverance these have developed in them to keep pushing and moving forward in life. Tune in to hear how their lives have gone from darkness to light and from wrong to strong. I'm your host. My name is Omar Calvillo, and tonight you guys are in for a treat. I got my brother. His name is James L. Capra. He's currently a CEO and founder of the Frontline Leadership Group. They're dedicated to developing tomorrow's leaders today. Mr. James Capra has successfully managed and led thousands of multi-generational employees during his governor tenure, having served in numerous leadership positions. He now shares his successful strategies on how to effectively develop outstanding organizational leaders across generational boundaries in the global business arena. Jimmy, as he is known by his friends and colleagues, retired after nearly 3 decades with the Drug Enforcement Administration. Prior to his retirement, Jimmy served as a chief of global operations, responsible for 227 domestic offices and 86 foreign offices in 67 countries. Prior to his D.E.A. career, Jimmy served in the U.S. Navy, U.S. Navy Reserves, Air National Guard, and as a military intelligence officer for the U.S. Army Reserves. Well, welcome to the podcast, brother.
Thanks, brother. Thank you for having me on, man. I gotta tell you, I'm just so honored that you had having me on, man. I really mean that. It's Bill Fay, who's a brother of ours. I've known Bill for well over 20 years, and when he got me connected, I said, "This is great. Would you like to?" I said, "Heck yeah, man. Come on, let's do it."
No, thank you so much for being here. That was actually going to be one of the first questions I was going to ask you. I was going to ask you, how does someone with all these, credentials, with an established career, end up on a podcast with a guy who had no credentials, absolutely no credentials,
Well, you know what, brother? You got all the credentials in the world knowing Jesus. And I don't say that because it's funny. In my line of work, in my career, I was doing, I had a radio show for a year. And I often have guys on, and a lot of these guys are warriors and backgrounds. And it's funny because people would ask me, goes, how do you contend with being a Christian and doing your line of work, locking people up and investigating people? I says, I don't know how to do it without it. I don't know how I'd survive without it when you see the underside. But I'm a guy that barely got out of high school. I was told throughout my high school years that I was never going to get anywhere. I was told that we were, was a loser. I was told that my family was a bunch of losers. There were 7 of us growing up. My dad was a retired New York City cop who got hurt on the job real bad. And anyway, we're a terrible student. But so I was pretty much told throughout my formative years, outside my family. My family was my dad, we think, had a 10th grade education. My mom, I think she had a high school graduation, but they were good parents, strict. But the rest, the outside community would say, in school and stuff, even teachers would look at us and shake their heads. So that's not, did it bother me? No, we grew up kind of tough, because of my old man, and his family came from Italy. My mom's family came from Portugal. So we were pretty, we probably weren't tough, like street tough. You know what I'm saying, brother? That took a while. That took a while for me when I came on the job. But I mean, we were tough in handling criticism and stuff like that. But the one good thing that I'm number one thing I'm thankful for is, my parents got me introduced to Jesus when I was relatively young, and it wasn't this, and I'm sure you have to deal with it sometimes. It wasn't this happy, holy, healthy, wealthy club, right? It wasn't this, oh, everything is fine. Sometimes life still sucked. Sometimes bad things happen. You have to contend with that. And, but it was the best thing that happened. I, gave my life to the Lord when I was relatively young, but, I joined the Navy and realized, man, the world's got a lot of great stuff out there that I want to see. I want to taste. I want to do. I didn't know you can go to these kind of clubs, and I didn't know you could do this. So I kind of went off the railroad tracks for a while. And when I got out after my first tour and started school. Wind up meeting my wife, who was the best thing that ever happened. We've been what's married now almost 42 years.
Wow.
With 6 kids and stuff. So yeah, she's my, outside of the Lord, she was my North Star and still is, buddy. Yeah.
Amen.
You know,
You know what? Can I ask you something? Because I know
yeah.
you went into the would you say what was the first one you went to, the reserves?
I mean, the first service I went to was the Navy.
Oh, the Navy. Okay.
Yeah.
Now
Yeah.
I know like I told you before we started recording that I watched one of the interviews you did, and you were talking
Yeah.
about your dad, and I believe he was a veteran of the Korean War. Is that
Yeah. My dad left school. He was in 10th grade. He dropped out to, join the army and fight in Korea. And then is what you did, and came home. Went on the police department, married my mom, and then not even 16 years later, really horrible wreck. He was a motor officer, motorcycle, broke his back and neck, and which sounds terrible, but it was probably a blessing for his children, because we wound up moving out of New York City to upstate New York, and on a big piece of property up there. But yeah. But all of his sons, so there were 6 boys and a girl, and all of us, actually including my sister. My sister wind up marrying my best friend growing up, who was a little bit older than me, and they both became pastors for 40 years. Oh, wow. And he's the guy who used to run around the back road smoking cigarettes and drinking beer, solving the problems of the world. He meets my sister, and I'm like, what the heck, man? I'm no longer in the front seat with him anymore. Right. And when I got married, went back into the service for a while, he's an amazing story, and just decided that's enough, and started attending a seminary, and he's pastored a church now for over 40 years. Oh, wow. So yeah, pretty cool how God does stuff, man. Yeah, another guy, if his story is amazing, because another guy that who people would look at and go, man, you're not going to go anywhere, one of those. So
gotcha. Okay, you know what? I want to ask you about your dad, because it sounds like he had like a lot of influence on you. He was in the military. He eventually became a police officer, and I was hearing you talk about like one of the things he did, because I know like military and the police. I mean, you guys are pretty tough, and you deal with tough people, but there were some things that he taught you about the people that he was like interacting with, like how to look at them, and how to even treat those that were out there breaking the law. You want to share?
Yeah, you know what? One of the things about my dad with 10th grade education, and like I said, he's a tough guy. I didn't talk back to my father till my second year in the Navy, and even then, I was afraid to talk back to him. He's going to hit me with a 2x4. But I'm just being honest, man. But he was tough as nails. But he was a good man. I mean, we lost him really young, and he was a good man. But one of the things about my father was, my father would tell you all the time, treat everybody with dignity and respect. I don't care where they came from. I don't care, who they are. I don't care the color. I don't care who they are. And the story that he told me once has really kind of galvanized it. I've written a handful of books, Omar. And believe me, if I don't know why I would have teachers that would be still alive, or if some of the friends that I had or acquaintances I had in high school, if they looked my bio up and said, wait a minute, this guy went to college and they wrote books, they'd be saying, he's a liar, man. He didn't do any of that stuff. He got it from the internet. But one of the things when I started writing, I talked about my dad, and I realized how much he cared for people, because he was a tough guy. I mean, there was we didn't have in my house, we didn't have these, like sometimes the movies predict, here's this, European family sitting down, the dad's talking nicely. My father every now and then would come up behind you when I was young and just smack me upside of the head. Not hard or anything, it wasn't hurt me. And I go, hey, Pop, what was that for? He goes, because you're up to something. I just know it. I know you're up to something. But
it was a preemptive strike.
Yeah, exactly, man, exactly. But one of the things about my father would say, he would tell you all the time, he'd say, a liar is worse than a thief. I want to let you know that. He says, a liar is worse than a thief. He said, be the kind of guy, that's how he grew up. He says, be the kind of person that people look towards and they want them on their team. They want them in their unit, not because you're the smartest guy. It's because you care about things and you want to do things right. He said, that's it. So he was big on integrity. He was big on your position as what manhood was all about. Manhood wasn't all about the macho go out and, try to sleep with the debts. He was, he wasn't against that, but he never used any of those fluffy words, brother. He would just sit there and say things. he was telling me a story one time. This will encapsulate it. He says he remember when he talked, he loved being a cop, and he would tell these stories, but they were never about, chasing people, gunfights and everything. He would talk about people on his beat. He would talk about the people that were eking out an existence. And I'll never forget one particular story that he was talking about. They had to go around and they had to round up the local prostitutes that were really coming. He worked in Midtown when Midtown was kind of like Hollywood. I mean, it was late 50s into the 60s. And it really was. Midtown used to be. So it was for a beat cop who worked, the beat and walking, it was a pretty good beat, but he had to, he had to go around. They were saying, hey, you got to, round up these gals and bring them in and everything. And he'd stop and he kind of just look away. He goes, you know what? No matter why they did what they did with their bodies, what the reason was, he goes, I never forgot that they were women. And I tried their best to treat them like that. Then he would stop and he'd look at me. He goes, always treat people with dignity and respect. And it took me a little bit time to realize he had to do his job, but he treated people well. I mean, here are these girls who are selling themselves on the street, and my father's thinking they're still women. They still need to be treated like women and stuff. And I think some of that sometimes is lost, when we're trying to raise kids and do stuff. We're trying to use all these ideas that are out there, just saying, hey man, try to treat people with dignity. I don't care. And, I carried that in my career, man. I during some of the guys and gals that I've arrested over my course of my career, I remember sitting down with some of them. Listen, I'm not telling you I tried to preach to him and everything else, but one guy comes, he was going to do some major time. It was a pretty big organization, slinging some major coke, and he just caught him by the short hairs. You could tell he was a young guy. And I remember sitting there thinking to myself, this guy, he threw everything away for that money, man, everything away. And people say, hey, do you feel good when people get locked up? I lived in court half of my career, prosecute people. And I got to be honest with you, you sit there, and I don't think I've ever, first of all, no, I've never been shot at by any bad guy. So, I don't have that story. You know what I mean? I'm thankful, Lord. I never had to shoot at anybody. I mean, I stuck my gun in a lot of guys' faces, a lot of bad guys' faces, but I've never had to. And the only time I did shoot my gun is there was a pit bull charging me, and I missed anyway. So it's a good thing I didn't have to.
Right.
Fire gun. But the idea, I think one of the things about being a Christian is you're sitting there and you're watching these men, in particular, mostly men, getting sentenced. And my heart is literally breaking, thinking their family at the whole 9 yards, it's just being tossed down the toilet because of friggin' money, man, because that greed and that desire for power and money. And I remember telling this one kid who was formerly a Marine, and, he was involved in an organization with his family, and he just said they're so stupid he took over. Well, we wind up bagging him with over 300 kilos. And he sat there. I go, listen, dude, all I can tell you is, there's hope. I know there's a big, looks like a white, light at the end of the tunnel, and it ain't a train. I said, but you're going to have to decide, what are you going to do from here out? Who are you going to rely on? And I said, I can just tell you there's still a God in heaven who knows that you exist. So, those are the kind, and I'm not trying to be Joe humble, brother. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to, he's such a, I'm a chucklehead. But it always kind of grieved me to watch guys get sentenced to major time and stuff. And there's some guys that are still in jail, but you see your hearts is breaking for them. But the only thing that's going to help them, it might not get them out of jail or anything, but in eternity, right? That's really when it matters, in eternity. And so you asked me about those. My father had a big influence on how we look at people and how, hey, trust me, there's been times, there's been times on the street fighting with somebody that you want to freaking pull their heads off. That's got to be, and especially if you're fighting, for your life or something, or hey man, if I don't get control of this, bad stuff's going to happen fast. And most of the time, we outnumbered the bad guys. But I never, from my heart, I never took great pleasure into watching the demise of some bad guy somewhere. It was his fault, her fault. But I didn't say how great is that? My heart was like, man, And you always did my best to when we did talk to them, to talk to them with a level of, respect, not that they were some kind of piece of garbage. They committed a crime. Yeah, this, that, they're a human being. And so I did my best in my profession and what I thought was not only responsible for me, but as a Christian, to talk to people, as if I don't hold anything over their heads. You know what I mean, man? That's the kind of impact it is. And I can do the same thing at work.
Right. Oh, you know what? I was going to ask you. I know you mentioned like in high school, you weren't like the brightest. So obviously, you made it to a big career.
I was the dullest knife in
the drawer. Huh? Hey, but maybe God's grace. But you know what? One thing I know you were on the Bible study on that Friday, and two things that stood out to me. Well, one of them, I know you mentioned God, obviously, that helped you, but the other one was your wife as well. And a lot of the men that I've had on this podcast that have been, like successful, they always bring up the wife. They either praying wife, a wife that encourages them. Yeah. So you want to tell us about that? Maybe
I got out of the Navy, started school. Never thought I was gonna. I said, how am I gonna get to college? I mean, I'm an idiot, and I don't. Like I said, that sounds good, Omar. Oh, that guy's being humble. But I knew academically that I was a box of rocks. I didn't do anything in her. I don't. It's funny because we look back and we knew the kids who were using dope and we knew the kids who didn't do it. Well, I was a good kid, but I was one of those. I was one of the guys who go, I don't know if that guy could spell his name. I was like, that was me, man. And so I found a small school in upstate New York that I went to. And the first day of school, I met what would be Michelle. I met my wife. And she floored me, not only because she was a good-looking woman, but everything. I got to know her over the course of a few weeks, and her moral compass, what it was, and her drive and everything. And what I did, man, is I went to the site because within about 2 weeks, I knew there's something about this woman. There's something about it. And I told a buddy of mine, who was a Navy buddy of mine, who grew up in Spanish Harlem. We made a pact to go to school together. I said, dude, I'm going to marry this girl. He goes, man, what's wrong with you? He goes, what the heck, man? We just got here. I go, I'm just telling you, man, I'm going to marry this girl. All true story. So when Shelly and I started dating, I started thinking to myself, I am a class A chucklehead. I'm going to screw this up, or the same thing that I was doing in the Navy, this is going to catch up to me. Man, how good God is. I went to the side of the building where she was staying, and I just started praying. I said, Lord, I'll screw this thing up. I said, please, if I'm not supposed to be in this relationship, if she's not for me, then you got to shut down. I said, and I was kind of blue. I said, because I'll F it up. That's basically that's how I talk to the Lord. Right. I know it's not good, but I was being honest, man. I will screw this thing up. And I really was just sharing. It was just my heart. Well, we start dating more during, I asked her to marry me about 3 months later. And that, like I said, that's about 42, 43 years ago. And then she grew up Catholic and came to the Lord through my family. My mom was a prayer warrior, and she's one of the most resilient women. She's my biggest advocate, when I would, I was finishing school, I was working, and I was in the reserves. And anybody else, they would say, hey, what are you doing? How come you do? She was constantly pushing. I had this desire and this dream to become a federal agent. Didn't think I was going to ever be able to do it, because I know the guy. See, I know the guy looking back in the mirror at the time. I know that guy, and that guy is secretly in his mind is a loser. He's not going to be able to make it, and all this other stuff. Well, he did make it by God's grace and because of my wife. So God, here it is. God's never whispered to me. He's never spoke to me, but through like people like my wife or other people, that men have come in contact with in my life. He's put my wife in my life to say, hey, there's the mark. There's the North Star. Rock and roll. Let's go. And she's always been like that. Dude, for weeks at a time, I live on the street doing investigation. Live on the street in the back of a car. She's pregnant, has one, or we have two or three, and I'm doing this, and you would figure you'd come home, and never once did she say, what are you doing? What's wrong with you? As a matter of fact, and I know I'm rambling, brother, and I'm sorry.
No, this is good. Yeah.
came home one time. She hadn't seen her folks in about 2 years. We were living in LA at the time. And I was just living on the street. I was chasing this group of really, really super bad guys that were using tractor trailers to move dope. And I hooked onto one, and me and my partner, and I came home just one night out of about 2 weeks. Her parents were there for like a week and a half. I saw them for like 3 hours. And they were wonderful people. Her dad was a former World War II guy and everything. And I remember coming home. I was a smoker back then. So I'd sit at the end of the table. They were already sleeping. It's 11 o'clock at night. All I want to do is take a shower, grab a new set of clothes, and head out the door. And I tell people, probably any other wife would have been saying, what are you doing? My parents are here, this, that, and the other thing. First thing is, how's it going? I said, it's good. I said, I think we're close, blah, blah, blah. I said, how's mom and dad? She goes, well, her mother started asking her, how can you live like this? They liked me. There wasn't that. How can you live like this? How do you do this? This is credible. This is not how a marriage should be. And my wife, because she's my wife, my partner, she says, you don't understand. This is my husband's career. This is his passion, and this is his calling. She goes, we're good. We're good with this. He's going to be fine. And people would often ask her, they would say to her, because we wind up eventually having 6 kids, they would say, what do you do when he goes off to work? What do you mean? How do you don't know if he's doing this? You don't know. She goes, I don't have time to worry about it. I just give it to the Lord and say, Lord, you got this. You got it. So that's only, so you heard of Proverbs 31, right? She's a Proverbs 31 wife. And I don't say that lightly. When you read Proverbs 31, man, it's powerful. It's powerful, man. Nothing is lost on this. When people say Proverbs 31, I go, that's a pretty powerful thing. That's how my wife, even my kids now that they're grown and have kids of their own, look at their mother and go, how'd you do that? I do the same thing. I had it easy. Listen, man, I'm the dude that went out, caught bad guys, got promotions, got patted on the back. Everybody's, ooh, look at that guy. Meanwhile, here's this gal. By the way, she's smarter than I am. She has a real degree. She has a math degree and a computer science degree. She could be the CEO of IBM. No joke, Omar. She could be. But early on, one of the things that, yes, again, I'm going on about, one of the things that we talked about incessantly when we were first dating is children, moral compass, careers, all this other stuff. And it's probably why we were attracted. She said, her thing was, when it was time to have children, we're raising our kids. I'm not having, it's just one. It's hard to do today. I know with income. Listen, I get it. And I would never tell anybody else how you should or shouldn't do that. It's up to them. Yeah. But that's how she was, man. That's where, she's driven. She was just driven with her family, pouring into her kids. She's a prayer warrior. She'd also look at me from time to time and look at me and go, a little bit too big for your britches, aren't you there, son? So you think you're Mr. You may think you're Mr. Cool Guy, big shot at work, but hey, guess what? I'm not taking out the garbage and doing the dishes once in a while.
Hey, or you eat some humble pie.
Yeah. So I make light of it, but it is important. In my bedroom, I have a big sign that if somebody gave me, it says one life and one wife. We've lived in a time where, we get tired of it. Let's try something new. We get tired of something. We try something new. I call them collectors sometimes. And listen, sometimes things happen in marriages. I get it, man. And I understand that. But sometimes things happen. But we promise. You said about one of the things we promised is we were never going to give up. And we're never going to give up. So we went through seasons like everything else, man. We went through seasons financially. We went through seasons. I'm sure she did. Looked at it, go, what the hell am I doing with this guy? So, but I did my best to be the best husband I can be, the best father that I could be, and I promised myself that I would run from stuff. It's the one thing about, I think, for me personally, is getting to know the Lord and getting into the Word and reading. I did my best to run from stuff. Run from certain opportunities that were going to take me down a road. Run from, sometimes living on the street for a while. Then you go out with the guys to have a couple of beers, and sit and relax. And the next thing you know, there's this chip, that chip over here, and everything. I'm getting out of here. I'm running from that stuff. Because different than anybody else, man. The freaking enemy, he'll reel you in there in a heartbeat. They just start reeling your butt in, man. Yeah. And it becomes easier to be involved. Listen, And I'm not trying to preach it. I'm some kind of,
This is the
if you,
podcast where we preach. So
man,
come with it, you know.
we do my best. I tell people, man, you got to run. That's what I've told my sons and daughters. I said, when you find your mate, when you find that man or woman that's equally yoked like you, it ain't over, because life starts throwing you stuff, and then the enemy will throw you stuff. You become a mark. You're young, you're good looking, you're pretty, and everything else like that. And you get older, and the muscles that you once had are not there anymore. The stuff that used to stand up high starts shagging a little bit. I said, that's just life. You just gotta, the Bible is replete with talking about, remember the wife of your youth, drink water from your own cistern and stuff. And people go, it doesn't say anything. Like, yes, it does. Man, just run from that other stuff, man. Run from that other stuff. So I've tried to do that. And I've tried to, more importantly, to witness to my children about the important, not only to who Jesus, and they're all saved, but they're all friggin' knuckle dragging warriors, all of them still. But to have a marriage that's lasting. And I think that's the most incredible. I really have a difficult time when I see, people talk about, here are the 5 things here. Let me tell you how to perfect that. It's a battle, man. Yeah. Especially with kids, man. You're in a battle every day. You're in a battle for their mind. You're in a battle for their soul. You just, that's how you think of it. That's how I think of it. Because my wife would say she doesn't think of it that way. Her pursuit was, pursue excellence in her family and pursue God's love and pursue Jesus in whatever she had to do. But there is no easy fix, man. And sometimes, the only thing we do is fall on your knees. I mean, and we're not immune from death, we're not sickness, anything else like that, So anyway, sorry to ramble, brother.
Oh, no, that's not a ramble. That's actually, thank you for sharing all that, because I think that explains like a lot, like some of maybe the success that you had, like people, like maybe they see only like the outer, right? They see you getting promoted, as you go up the ladder in a sense, but at home, it seems like the strength, like the stability was at home that allowed you to grow, So,
yeah, we try as much as you can, as yeah, we tried. There's, because of the job, sometimes it was hard to do. But I'll give you a perfect example of about my wife. So I was working in D.C. at the time. I was off the street. I was in Washington, D.C. And the administrator at the time, his name is Asa Hutchinson. He would wind up being a governor of Arkansas. He was one of the guys that ran for president, didn't make it and stuff. But I got along well with him. And Asa just took a liking to me. It's one of those things where I didn't know at the time, but he just kind of took a liking to me. The following week comes. It's an absolutely true story. I get called in. Now, I am an assistant to one of the big shots up there. And the administrator, Hutchinson's assistant, comes in and said, the administrator wants to see you. And I'm like, wait, what do you mean he wants to see me? What do you mean he wants to see me? So I go up and talk to him, and he promotes me like this super kind of promotion and stuff that we've never heard of in D.E.A. before. You don't see that. So you talk about, when I look back, and I'm very thankful, and I prayed and I asked the Lord, thank you for giving. So one of the things I do all the time is I have this tendency, we talk about praying always, train always. I got into a habit of praying about God's attributes. And I go, Lord, thank you for being a righteous guy, a holy God. And then I start thanking him for everything I have. And I invariably always thank him. Thank you for giving me the wife that I have, so that I could walk this path as well as you have allowed me. And so that's the kind of, that's the kind of impact. That's why I can't stand to be around people who talk negatively about their wives or their husbands. I can't, when I start to hear that, I'm like, I'm out of here. I don't have time for that. I don't, because if that's how you're going to do it with people, that's how you're probably doing it at home. I just don't have time for that. The few people that I do are close friends of me do, that's the thing. They put their wives up on a pedestal, and that's where most of them, belong. Again, listen, man, I know that there's sometimes problems. I know that sometimes people get married, they shouldn't get married. I get all that. But for me and my family, this is how we've always done it. And I'm thankful that the Lord's allowed me to do that. And it hasn't been bro, it's not like it's, oh, isn't it so great? Oh, isn't it wonderful? Dude, I'm sure there were times she'd like to grab my gun and shoot me. Trust me. I'm sure growing up, there's been a few times where she contemplated homicide.
Yeah,
So,
there was a
you
pastor
know,
that said, well, every time they celebrate their anniversary, that they look at one another and they say, last year I could have killed you, but we're still here,
yeah.
Their anniversary. Still here. But you know what?
So it's,
Yeah. I was gonna say,
go ahead, brother.
I want to shift a little. So the home, it's like,
Go.
like they see your wife and get the promotion. Could you talk about the career, some of the things that you experience out there, like some of the, I guess some of the case, I mean, not in detail the cases, but just things
so we
out there.
Yeah, so I was never, a police officer before. When I came on the job, I was a lot of military and stuff when I came on. So I tell people all the time, I was extremely green about, the whole world of policing and everything else. And being an agent doesn't mean you're a cop. It's just a different type of investigation. But one of the things, I just shared this with somebody. So one of the things was when I first came on the job, it was in the tail end of the cocaine cowboy days. It was the tail end of the Miami cocaine cowboy days. It had already started shifting. All the dope coming in from Colombia, Bolivia, and Peru was already shifting into Mexico, coming up through the southwest border, being staged in LA and out. We were just trying to understand what was happening because Miami was it, man. Miami, New York was it, man. New York for heroin, Philly for heroin, Miami for cocaine. That's just the way it was. And so our agency had a tendency to have this kind of, tunnel vision on, say, well, that's what's happening. Well, the bad guys have already reshifted and everything. And so I used to say early on, I go, Lord, and this is how I pray. I said, Lord, I don't know if this is a good prayer. I don't know if I'm supposed to pray like this, but can you help me get the bad guys? Can you help me get, the dope and the money and all? People say, you're never going to see this again. You're never going to see that again. That was my dopey prayer. That was Jimmy Capra's prayer.
The funny thing is about that, you're praying, help you catch the bad guys, and the bad guys are praying, Lord, don't let them catch.
Oh no, yeah, no. Oh my gosh, yeah. Sent them one time, everything else. They go bless it. They got. Oh yeah, the guys would go to witch doctors and bless their dope and everything else. And I was well aware of it. But I go, no, my God's bigger, man. I got a bigger God than you do. So no kidding. Though we go into I'll never forget. We hit a place and they had to forget which saint they had up there. It was the sacred this, that, the other thing. This big statue. I grabbed the statue because I'm thinking it's under there. And I was working with a Cuban cop, and he went, "Oh my God, you can't do that! You're going to be cursed." I go, "I'm not going to be cursed." "No, you don't understand that they do this." I said, "No, you don't." I swear, I said, "You don't understand my God. You have my God is the God. He's like the man. He's the guy." So I'm joking. I'm getting off a little bit, but I prayed those. I prayed that, pray those kind of prayers. And again, brother, I don't mean to come across like, oh yes, there was Jim Capra, this stuff. No, man, I was tough and grinding on the street with a bunch of other tough guys. These are guys that you'd want with you in a fight, guys that you want you on a front door, guys that you want with you in a firefight. These were focused, driven men and women. And so those are the kinds of guys that I went. They're all different now. They're all not everybody. Listen, man, not everybody was a believer or anything else like that. So that's the kind of prayer I prayed. And consequently, we wound up doing some of the biggest cases that have ever been seen. One, really some just amazing, huge cases that kind of broke the lid off some of the Mexican cartels and stuff. But so those are the kinds of things that we did. But we're still, I don't want anybody to think that it was mamby-pamby Christian stuff. It was If you're a bad guy and I'm coming after you, you're screwed. Yeah. That's how I would tell. And this is not being macho. You'd be the strongest guy in the world. But if you're a bad guy and I'm coming after you, you're done. You're not going to be able to hide. It's just one of those things. And that's the kind of people that I work with every day. We're not going to give it up. That's not the kind of thing, kind of driven in that way. So you're driven in that way and you're believing that that I belong to the God of the universe. Guess what? You're really screwed, excuse me, but that's the truth, man. That's just, hey, I'm sorry. But God's always, when I look, he's always honored me. He's always blessed me. It's not like I didn't have tough times. It's not like we didn't have illnesses. Not like in my family, I didn't have to experience death. We had all that stuff, but but I give you an example, and I say this because I'm not embarrassed about it. When I first got that big promotion from the administrator I talked about, I never forgot sitting in the chair, and I closed my door, came out to the front, kneeled down in front of my desk, and said, "Lord, I don't know why you have me here." And I started getting emotional. I go, but this is not the way things. It's like telling God, this is not the way it's supposed to work. I think they might have made a horrible mistake. That's why I'm here. And I joke about that, but I was serious because part of me was excited about the position, but the other half of me was kind of scared and nervous. And then when I wound up taking over Dallas years ago, I remember because early on in my career, one of the we weren't out there. We're on another deal, but probably one of the worst shootings that we've ever had. We lost two agents, and one was terrible. It was horrible. And you kind of never forget the screams, and you never forget stuff. But I remember when I got to Dallas, one of the first things I did is I got out of my car, got there early. I just kind of walked around the property praying. So Lord, you have me here for a reason. Please protect these men. I don't know. I was just talking to him. I said, you put me here. I don't know why yet, but I'm here. And I want to not just honor you, but I want to be a good representative, whatever that means, still being a chucklehead, Lord. And I walked around, touched the gates, walked around the whole property, man. Walked around the property and touched the fence and said, Lord, bless this place, protect these men. And for the 6 years that I was there, it was a stellar 6 years. I mean, thank goodness, all of the men and women were, we still lost people, but they were lost to like death or an accident. You know what I mean? We didn't lose anybody in an operation or stuff like that. So I believe that God honored that prayer. I just believe it. He honored that prayer. And again, I tell people all the time, brother, because I'm a Christian, because I believe in Jesus Christ, that He's my Savior. What He did on the cross, He took my sins, and as far as the east is from the west, He threw them away. That's hard sometimes to reconcile with. That's hard to, but He did. And so I'm going with that. The older I've gotten, this life is temporary. And so one of the things that I talk about now when I go out is, how much time do you have? People, when we talk, how much time do you have? How much time do you have left? I start to put that into reality. It's just, there is, and I think everybody intrinsically knows, I love these people. Well, there's nothing after this. Really? You don't think so? What you're doing is you're hiding that. You don't want it. But I think He's built it into us to know there's something else, man. There's something beyond this. And Jesus talked about it all the time. Like, two places you're going to go. You're either going to go and stand before the Lord when He says, come on in, man. And I'm being a little glib about that. Or you go to a place that's was designed for, the fallen angels. Yeah. So this serious, when you start thinking about it, man, people laugh and they go, oh, that's fairy tale stuff. If I'm wrong, I got nothing to lose, right? Yeah. If we're wrong about our faith, Omar, if we're wrong about heaven, if we're wrong that when we die, we don't go somewhere, we have nothing to lose. But if we're right, which we are, what the Bible tells us, what Jesus talked about. People forget Jesus talked about hell. He talked about heaven. He talked about, and I go back to think about, I think one of the best stories, within our community, I'm talking about the Christian community. There's all sorts of us, right? You, me, people from bizarre backgrounds, people who are extremely wealthy, people who are, nearly destitute, all in that kind of part of that, the Christian community. When you hear different ways of people, this is what you have to do. You got to do this. You got to belong to this. You better be baptized. The guy on the cross, the two thieves on the cross, man, I remind people, I use this in one of my books at the end because I talked a lot about my faith. I wrote a book called Raising Courageous Children in a Cowardly Culture. And I just it wasn't a how-to book, man. It was just, my son came home. He was a cop. He's a SWAT guy. And he said, Dad, what's wrong? This is what he said. What's wrong with my generation? I'm like, well, that opens up things wide open. And what he was getting at, he was frustrated with some of the ethical things. He was frustrated with some of the other issues he's faced with. He was frustrated that men and women his age looked at work a little bit differently. And so I went to my wife and I said, what would you think if we just wrote our story? Not a how-to. We just talked, and it's really a book about hope. It's about what we did to raise 6 kids of purpose. And we didn't leave anything out, man. We just did the good, the bad, and the ugly. But throughout it, I talked about our faith. Throughout it, I talked about how important our faith was. Throughout it, I talked about how much it was important to us to pour into that. And at the end of the book, I said, listen, some of you who've read this, have heard a lot about, you're going, what is this Jesus thing? So what is this Christian thing? I said, let me offer this up. I said, when Jesus was crucified on the cross, he had two thieves that were crucified on either side of him. He says, theologians and scholars say that they really weren't thieves, that they were probably murderers. And that's why they were being crucified. And the one guy started cursing. Because, well, if you're this guy, get us off. If you're this guy, get us off. But the other guy, the other thief on the cross, looked over because he knew. I think he knew. He said, "Hey, Lord, when you go into, your kingdom, remember me. Remember me." What did Jesus say? He said, "Today, not tomorrow, not this." He didn't ask him if he was a Baptist, a Catholic, a Lutheran. He didn't ask him if he got baptized. He didn't ask him, do you believe in post-trib, mid-trib? He didn't ask him if he was a Calvinist. He didn't ask him if it's Armenian. He said, "Today you'll be with me in paradise." He didn't ask him how much he tithed, right? He just said, "Today," because he knew the man's heart. Yeah. "Today you'll be with me." And I tell people all the time, man, we get so caught up with, what do I got to do? What do I got? You just got to go before him and say, "Hey, Lord, it's me. Forgive me. Forgive me." And he promises, he said, "Whosoever believes in me, that yet though he or she dies, will live." Yeah. I'm up with that. I'm that guy. I'm the guy. You know the story about when Jesus tells the story about the two guys in the wall, and the one guy is sitting there going, "Oh Lord, I'm glad I'm not a sinner like that guy." Right?
I was just thinking about that one.
Right? He's look how. And the other guy, he won't even get close to the wall. He's got his head bowed. "Oh, Lord, forgive me." He's forget. I get that guy. Yeah. It's like, it's me again, Lord. It's me again. I'm still dealing with this. I still struggle with this. I still got this. And in my mind's eye, I go, Lord's going, "Hey, it's Jimmy again. He doesn't get it. It's all right, man. It's all right. Get back in the arena."
The part about that story I love, it says that he couldn't even lift up his eyes, that he had his head down, while the other guy was like professing how great he was. And I think that's what we need to be. Also, didn't one of the thieves also say, like, "Man, why are you talking to him? Like we deserve to be here."
That's the guy.
This man has done nothing,
Yeah, we deserve this. Yeah. And I think that's it. When we come into this, we realize what I deserve is wrath. What I deserve, is death, torment, and all the other. But he said his grace is sufficient. Dude, like I said, man, hey, if I'm wrong, Omar, if you're wrong, so what? What if we're wrong? So we go into the dust, but we know we're not. The Lord said he's put it into all men's heart to seek him. Yeah. Right.
So a sinner saved by grace. A lot of times people think that we do, like, let's say the good, quote unquote, good things.
Yeah.
We're in favor with God, but it's when we, like you mentioned, that guy that he said, "Man, Lord, forgive me, for I'm a sinner.
Yeah.
I have sinned against you." Is like knowing that, like you mentioned, like we deserve God's wrath, but he's given us his mercy, his grace, his forgiveness. That's what makes us do those good works that I think there's two that he said that he prepared beforehand for us to walk in.
How cool is that, man? He knew you before the beginning of the earth, the foundation. The Bible says that. Before the foundations of the earth, he knew you, and he knew you by name. That, like, you start trying to wrap your head around that, it's like, dude, I don't, what? So, and there's the other thing because the older you get, I go, there's a couple of places in Psalms and in Proverbs of, "Lord, teach me to number my days so that I may gain a heart of wisdom." Yeah. And so when you break that down, you say, "Teach me to number." No, Lord, teach me to understand. I'm only here for a moment, and even Jesus for a vapor. And in that time, make me understand that, so that when I do this life, I do it with wisdom in terms of what am I doing for you? What am I doing? And I think part of that for me was, what am I doing? It's really important for me to pour into my family. People, as I'm raising my kids, some people would say, "Hey, maybe you should do this with church." And I said, "Listen, dude, my responsibility, not just in my profession, is to raise up these children I have, and my wife, first of all, to protect them, to make sure that I'm making money so that we can pay mortgages, but more importantly, so that they all know who Jesus is.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, I'm good to go. So I was that was important to me because I got asked, well, did you get involved in church? Did you get involved in that? Dude, I'm my day just working sometimes, especially on the street, go from 12 to 16 hours a day or more living out there. And then when I had time for my family, when I made time, that was important. I made time for the family. So and one of the things I talk about, Omar, is I tried my best is to be intentional in my faith, intentional as a husband, and intentional as a dad. Do things on purpose with them. And so, and I hope, for my children and my wife, and the feedback that at least they're giving me, I was okay. Wasn't perfect, but my wife's still with me after 42 years.
Man.
So she can't complain.
You know what? Speaking of intentionality, like I'm involved in ministry. I go to church, involved in Ben's ministry. Me and my wife, elders at church, and we're involved in ministry. And then I do the podcast one day, then I edit on another day. So it takes up a lot of time. So from June 7th to July 7th, I took a 30-day break. And I told my kids, like, whatever you guys need me to do with you guys, for you guys, put it on the calendar. So I took off 30 days and
good.
I took them driving because they're one's 19, one's 17. So I'm teaching them how to drive. And so the reason I did that, because I felt I don't want them to ever resent ministry or to say Dad put ministry before us, because they are my first ministry. My wife, my kids. So
Bible talks about that,
yes.
man. Bible talks about being able to take care of your family versus other things becomes one of the most important things. It's kind of like work-life balance, even though it's sometimes difficult to really put your finger on. But if you don't make time, if you're not intentional with your family and with your children, if you don't, I would tell people, stop, and I got to come up for air. I have to. You can get lost. You can get burned out. You can get burned out with church stuff. You can get burned out with small group meetings and stuff like that. People, oh, no, you can't. Yes, you can. Yeah. You can. Just be mindful of that.
Yeah, definitely.
That's good that you are, man.
Yeah, no, for sure. You know what? I want to ask you about leadership. I know you're very big into leadership, and like I told you, I was listening to one of the podcasts you did, and there's a lot of leaders out there that believe that you shouldn't build like relationship with those under you. You just delegate or rule, tell them what to do.
Yeah.
But from what I heard you say, you have a very different perspective. You want to share on your view as far as
so. It's funny because there's so much stuff out there. If you Google leadership, you'll hit 50 million hits. You'll get people that are as young as 23 running around trying to tell people how to run an organization to other people. So I have the secret sauce to doing it. I just use the way I walked into leadership was, and I learned a lot, made a lot of mistakes, made a ton of mistakes. And I was fortunate to have men and women who loved me and forgave me for, my shortfalls. But I tell people, if you decide to go into a leadership position, what you're doing is you're deciding to walk into a place where you're going to learn how to love people. And people go, what are you talking about? I feel like and they get this concept of love screwed up, man. Like it's a quiver in your liver. I said, love it. In other words, you have to consciously love your people and care about these men and women. You have to want to care about them. It's not, you don't hold them accountable. They're not going to hold you accountable. It's not, everybody gets a hug. It's you care about them as human beings. And here's the weird thing, especially for us. Here's one of the challenges for us. Man, it's easy to like people who are like us. Oh, he's got the same faith. He has the same political. Maybe he looks the same. That's easy to do. It's different, man, when you're working alongside of men and women who think differently than you. They believe differently in terms of maybe their faith, maybe their familial situation. It's different. They feel completely opposite than you. But when you're their leader, you still got to care about them. You don't have to agree with somebody's lifestyle. You don't have to agree with somebody's faith. It's not what you're called to. You're called to love them and care about them and say, okay. And then you want to develop them professionally and personally. And you do that and how you do that is by you start to have a relationship with them. You get to know people. And that's a hard thing to do because some people don't want you to know them. It's a walk. You're always you're always learning. Like, it's not about I'm the boss, you do what I say. That's old news, man. It's about, hey, man, how are you doing? What's happening? And I have, one of the things when I wrote my first book, I wrote is Leadership at the Front Line. And I just talked about my walk. I just talked about the things that I learned. And people said, what's the best way to lead? I said, you learn to love people, love to care about them. I don't care what organization you're doing. And these researchers, there's a bunch of research guys that are out there that have written all sorts of great books. And every one of these men and women who've written books on leadership and research, it always comes down to the best CEOs, the best leaders are men and women who cared about their people. Listen, man, if you're running a business and you're in it for a profit, we get that. But the only way to get there, the only way to get to the profit, to get to those cores, is your men and women who take you there. And the only way they'll take you there if they know that they're cared about, that they're genuinely cared about. Your number one thing that you're missing is your men and women. Do you care about them? I mean, do you really care about them? And so I have stories in the book about, things that you learn, you watch people go through. Where in any leadership book does it talk about when you're sitting in your office and somebody comes in and sits down and says, my wife just left me? Sits down and says, my kid was killed in an accident. Get a phone call at 2 a.m., sits down. And these are things that have happened in my walk. Sits down and said, my wife was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer. Well, let me see, where is that in the book? It isn't, man. It isn't. And there are times in my career in the walk that sometimes I can't bring the kid back. I can't take his disease away. But in that moment, I could put my arm around that person. Sometimes I've done it. You put your arm around somebody, you cry with them, man. Yeah. You can't do anything. You can't do anything else, or if they're receptive to it, you take a moment just to pray for a minute. Lord, bless them, be there, comfort them. That's it, man. That's it. Somebody has a baby and they can't make it to work. We're going to be here tomorrow, man. Don't worry about it. It'll be here tomorrow. And so when you start to walk like that, and the way you walk like that, if you're going to walk your walk as a Christian, that starts to become crystal clear to you. Those things become. Now, listen, there were people. It's almost impossible to fire people in federal government, number one. But there were some people in my walk that I did have to fire. There were people that I said, you're not getting promoted. There were some people that I had to look at and go, you can do better than this, and you're not. Guess what? I'm moving you from here to here. Sometimes I want to say, hey, you suck, but that's frowned upon, But really, I still have to do those types of things. I still have to tell people, no, man, you're not. No, sorry. Hey, will you support me in a transfer? No, why? Because you ain't doing what you should be doing. So it doesn't remove you from those things, yeah. Right? And people say, well, do you care about them? Yeah, I still cared about them. I did care about them. I remember telling one guy I thought he was a cancer. So you're a cancer.
Well, one of the words I heard you say in that interview, accountability, because a lot of times we think love, we got to get the people to like us, but story about a word you use a few times is moral compass, and how at times you had to share your moral compass with other men that were on their way. I believe you almost heading straight down a cliff in a sense. But by the choice,
I talk about
the lifestyle that they were living.
I talk about that a lot when one of the things I talk about is moral and ethics and where your moral compass is, and don't compromise it. And so, there's kind of from years ago, locker room talk and all this other stuff. And you have to set the example. I had and there's been a few times in my walk where I grabbed somebody, put them off, and said, I never want to hear you say that in here. I never want you to. Somebody was bragging about, an affair, bragging about this, that, and the other thing. So don't do that. That's cancer. Don't do it. I mean, if you want to ruin your life, there's been a few times that I've had to say that. If you want to ruin your life, that's up to you. But you don't bring that in here. I'm not putting up with that stuff. You're not. That's just not going to happen. I was overseas training, and I literally had somebody that I thought I knew that I didn't. Some guy kept saying, hey, they were sitting around with a bunch of flight attendants or something. And anyway, guy kept going, hey, come to the table, come to the table, come to the table, come to the table, sit with us. Nah, dude, that's stuff that I run from. Sorry. And this one guy came up to me. One guy came up to me, pointed his little bony fingers out. This is what he had the friggin' cojones to tell me. He said, if I hung out with you for a week, this is what he said. He said, I'd corrupt you in a heartbeat. That's what he told me. That's what he said to me. I wanted to punch him in the face. I've known him for a long time. Honestly, I want to punch him right in the face. I thought I knew him. Family knows him. Didn't know him at all. I was killing me. I can't believe he's saying this. And I remember looking at him and saying, let me tell you something, man. I can become like you, like that. Just what he did, like that. I said, you can never be me again. You can't. And I walked away. And that was pretty freaking mean, dude. But he was so convinced that, because that's the kind of life I didn't know he lived that kind of life. Listen, bro, this is somebody that we would have at the house and family and everything. I didn't know who this person was. And I just said, no, man, you're not gonna get away with that. Omar, I would tell people this, what do you believe? I go, what do you mean? About everything. Well, about my faith? Sure, about your faith. But what do you believe about your work? What do you believe about being a father? What do you believe about, being a son? What do you believe about your employment? What do you believe? Because those beliefs, your hardwired beliefs, that's why our faith is so important. Those beliefs those things wind up that you can't see them. So if I had a triangle, your beliefs are kind of underwater, thinking about the iceberg, right? But those beliefs start to establish the things that you value, right? That you value. That's why let's go back to the street, right? When we're on the street, you run into gangsters and everything, and you start talking. Some of these guys don't believe in anything. They don't believe in terms of they have a twisted sense of morality. They have a twisted sense of right and wrong. They have a twisted sense of family. That's why we can look at people and say he has a bad character. But character is nothing more than the execution of what you believe. And character is nothing more than you're shown what you believe. This is what I believe, because those beliefs kind of they'll start wrangling and start establishing not only your values, and then your values will lead to your actions. I can watch your actions. So let's say I don't know you from anything. I don't know what you believe, but if I took the time, if I could, and followed you around for maybe 2 or 3 days, I could understand what you believe.
Right.
It wouldn't take much time. Same thing with me. Follow me around, see what believe. And every now and then I go, man, I didn't know you were that much of a chucklehead, So what I'm saying is you're constant, and it's never get there, man. You never arrive at being this kind of, grandiose. You're always learning. And there are times you got to go back and you got to, wind up telling people, hey, you're sorry about stuff that happens. It shouldn't be all the time, but every now and then we got to go, hey, man. I used to tell people, the older I got, I used to tell people that how much, you love them.
That's also some good stuff, man, especially like leadership and the family. And I think it's very important. Like, I know you mentioned a lot about the home, but I believe it starts there. Like, I tell people, like, what's the point of me succeeding, let's say in ministry, at work, and my family's like falling apart,
Yeah.
So I believe it starts at home with first and foremost with the wife. A lot of times people think, oh, it's with my kids. No, it's not. It's with the wife. I read a book and it said the best thing you could do for your kids is to love their mother. And that's something that I strive to do, like to try to keep the peace at home. And another thing, speaking of peace at home, another thing that he said was like the world's gonna beat you up. The workplace is gonna beat you up. If the home ain't a safe place for you to run to, where are you gonna run to? If our kids,
that's 100%,
because there's chaos, because there's conflict, because there's always fighting and arguing. Why would they want to come home? The home should be like the refuge.
That's exactly right. And that's one of the things that Shell and I used to talk about. Home should be a refuge. In other words, but and I talked about watching some of my kids going through stuff as they got. People go, "Oh, your kids must all be. They didn't do drugs because you were." So I have a lot of friends and acquaintances who, in the same career I did, who've taken their kids to rehab. Some lost. It's ugly. But home should be a refuge, and what I mean by that is, if my kids found out they were in quicksand in life, that home was a place that they can come back to and touch base. And I said, my daughter said this to me. She was sitting out, I took her out, so we went out to breakfast, little hole up the road here. And while we're eating, she goes, Dad, she goes, I'll tell you something. I said, why? She goes, you and Mom are a fairy tale. I was like, what? She goes, Dad, you and Mom are a fairy tale. You're a friggin' fairy tale. And I'm like, where the heck is this coming from? I'm trying to, okay, She goes, Dad, I don't have a single friend. I don't have a single friend. This is what she told me. And she spent a lot of time in the Northeast and it's really lived life. Because I don't have a single friend whose mom or dad haven't been married, divorced a few times. None of them. She said, I don't have, most of the people that I know they have, this, that, and the other thing. She says, your guys' fairy tale. I said, let me tell you something. I said, you never saw the, Mom and I kept the dark side of the fairy tale away from you. We did our best we could.
Yeah.
I said, we really did. I said, you think for 1 minute there weren't times, especially in younger years, that your mom more than likely than me looked and said, what the hell am I doing with this thing? I could be she was climbing up the ladder in IBM. And I said, you didn't see the times that we're worried, can I make the mortgage payment? There you see the times that we didn't make this payment late on so we can make that payment on this on. You didn't see the number of times when we're out in LA that, thank God for these little friggin' markets where you can buy clothes for your kids and stuff. We weren't poor, dude. Don't get me wrong. We weren't poor. But I said, you just didn't see that sign.
Yeah.
I said, we kept grinding. We kept saying, okay, Lord. We kept at it every day. I said, for us, we just said, we promised each other we're not giving up. And again, I told her this, like I told you earlier. I said, I'm sure Mom probably could have wanted to commit homicide a few times, but we're never going to give up. I said, we just tried to hide that from you guys a lot. You saw us arguing from time to time, but we didn't. We tried not to have that, and we did our best to pour into you what maybe what the Lord wants for your life, and what He wants your heart first. So, yeah, I got involved in men's ministry for a while, and I said, man, we're not good at sharing our problems with other men because that's weakness, right?
Yeah.
We're just not good. I have a friend of mine, I call him accountability brother. Was never a cop, was marketing. I love him dearly, met him through the men's thing, but he's a guy that I can sit with and I could drop my guard around. What I mean by that is I can say, completely different walk of life, man. But we can sit down and I can say to him, hey, how's it going? I go, hey, it sucks. I'm having this, that, and the other. And there's been a few times in the course of our good friendship in the last 7 or 8 years that we've done that, and here's what you get from that. That's why I think when you talk about accountability, I call him an accountability brother. This is why those things become important, I think, especially for men, is you need somebody that you can talk to. And I tell men all the time, don't have an accountability sister. That don't work. Don't go there. Get somebody like you who's, same faith, same moral compass, the best maybe through the men's ministry and stuff, and just be you, just be you. So when I retired, I did things a lot differently. I decided to do the speaking thing, and a few years down the road, it's going good. COVID hit, shut everything down. And I was really at an all-time, things really weren't happening for the speaking and everything. I was coming home, and there was a particular station I listened to, called the Word FM, and it has a couple of pastors that I really like that are teachers. And a commercial came on. The station manager says, "Hey, if you ever," basically talking about having your own radio station. I'm like, "Hey, man, I have a radio station." I was just pulling into my complex and everything. So I pull in. Omar, I don't do anything big or little without talking to my wife. That's just how I've been. And that's not because Jim did that. That's because my father taught me about that. He used to say all the time, I tell Mom, he said, I tell your mother everything. I told your mother everything that happened at work. I tell your mother when he was a cop, I tell your mother everything. So anytime I'm trying to think about, am I going to do this? When I started writing, when I decided to do this business, I ran it by her. Because if she said that doesn't sound good, I would go, okay, hang on. Because sometimes for men, Faye taught me this. Bill Faye taught me this. Sometimes for men, he would say, he goes, sometimes God speaks to men through their wives.
Yes.
You just learn to listen. Learn to listen, he'd say. I never forgot that. I mean, I never forgot that. So anyway, I hear this, and I don't say anything to Shell. So I come home, I go to my desk, I get on the email, and I email this guy, an email. Said, hey, this is who I am, blah, 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 this, that, and the other thing. And that's it. 20 minutes later, I get a phone call. I almost hung up on it because I thought it was spam or something. I pick it up. Hey, this is so-and-so from, and I said, who the blank is this? No, huh? He goes, you sent an email. And I'm like, oh. And now I'm talking to a Christian station. I had sent.
Oh,
yeah. So it's true, man. So I start talking to the guy, and he said, hey, listen, we'd really like you to come down. I want to talk to you. He said, we looked at it. He goes, we don't have anybody like you. I was like, oh, well, listen, I can't do anything. I don't even run this by my wife. So I come into the office real quick. I said, hey, let me run something by you. I mean, I can get 5, 6, 7 words out of my head. You got to do it. You got to do it. So we go down, meet with them, and we do a 1-year contract with them. And we're on first on the air once a week, and then it was twice a week. And then it was a half-hour program called Leadership at the Front Line. And I would upload it to Spotify. And they're all still on there under Leadership at the Front Line. And it was so much fun. And it was a lot of, I was trying to talk about leadership through the lens of faith for the most part. And I had a lot of different guys on there from different walks of life and stuff. And a couple of really power players on there. The former director of national intelligence, John Radcliffe, who's a friend of mine, used to be a U.S. attorney. And not everybody was a evangelical, so just people in positions and talking to them about leadership. But it was really, it was joyful to do. It was, and so we uploaded the whole year, different episodes onto Spotify. And then towards when the year anniversary came up, we were pumping a lot of money into it, but we weren't getting anything on return. And so from a business standpoint, I did everything we could, but we couldn't justify putting money into it. We just couldn't. We prayed about it and everything. And it's not a failure. It's just, God allowed me to do that for a season. Right. So we've been praying about more gigs and trying to get out and do more speaking. And just within the last week, again, I don't believe for 1 minute that God's some genie, that I pray and I want this and he gives it to me. That's not what I'm saying. I believe that the seasons, he's moved in the seasons that we've been in, and sometimes he's been quiet. If I'm honest, sometimes during my life he was quiet in the season, but he never left me, never abandoned me, never did not bless me with children, with things, with positions, with all the other stuff. But he's not a genie. I tell people all the time. That's why I said we prayed earnestly about that radio gig. We got it. We did it for a year. Didn't work out the way we wanted it. Is it a failure? No. He gave me that opportunity for a year. I got connected to some people that had been connected to. Yeah, it's still on Spotify. So
yeah.
Still go in there and listen and God, that's great. And so lately, we kind of been praying because, what opens more doors and stuff. I'm a retired public servant, all this other stuff. So we're fortunate I have a retirement stuff, but you know what? I always go, Lord, I want to do this more. I want to do more. You've got me living here. So just recently, we've gotten a couple of phone calls and the gigs are going to seem to be picking up a little bit. But even if they don't, here's what I'm getting to say. Even if I never have another speaking gig for the rest of my life, we're good, man. God's been good to me.
Yeah.
You go, so if I never write again, if I never speak again, what would you do? Nothing. I do keep thanking God, watching my family grow, ask him to bless and protect my children, pouring into my children, even as adults. I got this tendency, not a tendency, I'm trying to get into a habit now that every night I'll send in, I love the Psalms. So I'll pull something out of Psalms and send it. Not just my kids, but their husbands and or wives. Just a brief boom here. Why? Not so they can walk around being holy. So it's a reminder, man. Reminder, God is good, man. Reminder, God is faithful. Reminder, God is righteous. Reminder, God is holy. Reminder, he's a just God. He loves his children. You're an heir to the king. Never forget it. We're done with this earth suit. We will stand before him.
Amen.
That's how we try to roll, man. That's it.
That's a great way to roll there.
That's it. So it doesn't. I always go back to it. Says I'm in some kind of club, where people would say, "Man, you sound like those are losers." I'll be with the losers then. I'm good with that. Jesus was a loser. I'm glad to be, in his club. It's embarrassing sometimes to look. He really. There's a psalm, or I think it's in the Psalms, or Proverbs says, "Lord, what is man that you would even take time to really us, me?" Yeah. Honestly, not being Harry Humble, but look, if I was you, I'd smite me. Yeah. I would, thank God I'm not. But that's that's the kind of stuff. That's how good that God is.
Yes, he is.
I watched my brother Lou, 6 boys and a girl in my family. I know all of them are still married to the same wives, and My brother Lou, his wife, he was Coast Guard, and his wife, he would tell you his first wife saved him from death. He'll tell you outright, saved me. He was a fighter. He was crazy. My youngest brother, but his wife tamed him. And he loved the Lord. I mean, he loved the Lord, but he was, you bumped him, look out. And his wife was amazing. Had 3 boys, raised them, all saved by grace. And I watched him. He's supposed to go on a trip with me and my wife and my other brother and his wife. We're all excited. And on the way to the airport, his wife doubled up, didn't know what's going on. And 6 months later, she was gone, right? Some rare form of cancer that even the cancer doctor said, I've seen this once in my entire career, this type of cancer. Devout. My brother's a devout, like me, fight like a warrior. His wife on her knees, praying for her children, her children. And you sit and go, I don't get it. But I watched my brother walk through that. And I got to tell you, man, I go, Lord, I think I would fail. If I'm honest, bro, I watched him go through that with such conviction and passion. And he was there when she drew her last breath in a hospice and everything. Never. I remember him reciting Job, yet though he slay me, I go, and Lord, how? Yeah. How, man? His kid's the same way, man. His kid's the same way. And I'm like, so, here it is. And we got even closer. We're all pretty close and we got even closer. But after 2 years, I would talk to him. He just said, he goes, the loneliness. I said, come on. He would say, would come on like waves. Just the he goes, I never kind of realized it. And he felt guilty that he, was kind of looking at dating and stuff like that. Well, dude, he winds up meeting this chick who is amazing, just an amazing gal, Christian, lost her husband in a kind of a similar manner, hit it off. And here it is now, 5 years later since his wife died. He's married again to this wonderful woman. God has blessed him incredibly where they live, all this other stuff. And you just go, you can't, this is a God thing, man. You can't, he makes, he makes beauty from ashes,
yeah.
Joy from your tears and stuff like that. And I just go, this is incredible. We love her, man. We love her. I'm going out to see him in a few weeks. I mean, and she's a prayer warrior, this woman, but what I'm getting to is in our walk and in our faith is we think sometimes, we're supposed to be immune from stuff. Dude, we ain't, right? Sometimes it piles on and we look up and go, hey, how much more? And as I watch my brother go through this, I go, Lord, I don't get it. And I listen, I still, when things happen, when people ask, I go, I don't know why. I heard Franklin Graham the other day when he was talking about the assassination attempt of the former president. He's beautiful, man. He says, I don't know why God saved some people and why some people died. He goes, I don't know why. I don't know why that one guy took a bullet and the other guy did. I don't have an answer for that. And I often say, I don't even know if we're going to know on the other side. Right. I don't know. I don't know if it'll matter. We don't have those, answers. That's why I laugh when people try to say, well, I know why. I don't know why. All I know is he's still God. No matter, like listening to my brother go, yeah, not yet though he slay me, I'm gonna praise him. I'm gonna honor him. I'm gonna worship him. Because that's it, man. That's it. This is it. We're here for a moment. Just here for a moment. So, hey, man, I'm sorry, man. I was rambling.
No, yeah, no, that's good. I was thinking about when in Matthew 8, when the Jesus got in the boat, the disciples followed him, and you would think, man, they're following Jesus, everything's gonna be good. But man, that's when the storm came. So sometimes, we're not the storms, and sometimes following Jesus is gonna bring us into the storms. But I think he desires to strengthen our faith. I think that's what he was trying to teach the disciples in that story there, because he asked them, like, where's your faith? When I was studying that, and it said that the storm didn't wake up Jesus. It was the disciples' lack of faith that got his attention. And he said Jesus addressed man first because he knows man is the hardest to deal with. Then he rebuked the winds and the waves because he knew that that was easy. But he's like,
Yeah, yeah.
let
How
me
cool is
talk to
that, man?
these hard headed men.
That's true, man. It is true. There's a point, man. Those dudes they've been with him all this time and watching him heal, the sick, the lame, the blind, raising the dead, everything else like that. And they're still panicking. Oh, we're gonna die.
Yeah. And
I
he's
said,
in the boat.
listen, you know what?
Hey,
Hey, you know what I use? I've said this before. I go, listen, if I was walking with Moses and he went up to the mountain and I was down there 40 days waiting for him to come in, I'm convinced I'd be collecting all the earrings. I'd be
Party,
convinced.
right?
I'd be one of the guys helping make that cow. I said, we look at it and go, oh, it wouldn't be me. And I go, Lord, oh, please don't ever test me. Don't.
Says only by the grace of God. Going back to the story you shared about that guy that give me 1 week and you and I will
Yeah.
be able to corrupt you. It's only by
Yeah.
the Spirit, by the grace of
Yeah.
God that we're not like me.
Yeah.
It's been it's gonna be on October 26th of this year. It'll be 20 years that I haven't drank or done any drugs.
Yeah.
People ask me, "Oh, or they tell me, oh, you got a lot of willpower or a strong will," and like, nah, like I
I
tell
got
them, this is what I tell them: trust me, it ain't me because I know me.
Yeah.
I know what this flesh desires. I know what
Yeah.
this flesh is after, and it's only by the
Yeah.
grace of God that He's been able to keep me that this long. And I pray it continues to go even further than this.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely, man. 100%.
Amen.
That's because you know where your strength comes from. That's
Yeah,
the thing.
there
We're
you
not.
go. Exactly.
We know, like I said, we're not to this point where we know the guy or the gal looking back at us in the mirror going, oh, I know that guy. He's not well.
Good, no good. Yeah,
If it wasn't
brother. Yeah, I was gonna ask you: is there any maybe something we didn't get a chance to touch on that you want to share before we get ready to sign off?
No, you know what? Like I said, I put something out the other day. Somebody was asked, especially when I got a heart for, for parenting and children. And it's just, there's so much fluff out there. There's so much, especially for marriages, so many things out there. And I would say one of my, I got asked to speak at a prayer breakfast not long ago. And one of the guys asking me goes, what would you say about any kind of intentionality? Get back to intentionality. I said, one of the things the older I've gotten, when I start to realize the brevity of our life is how important it is to do things on purpose. How important it is because we all get into a habit of doing things. I get up in the morning, do our gig, do this, that, and the other. I said, even including in prayer, which becomes prayer can be rote. Remember, the Lord said, don't be like the others and sit there and say these. He taught them how to pray. And I've done my best to tell my kids that talk to the Lord like you're talking to him, like he's sitting next to you, not therefore, oh God, like you said, thou art thou, whatever. It's just be honest with him, man. I'm being intentional about if you're in pain. He gets it. He already knows. Same thing with your marriage and with your children and everything. And just believe that I've just got to a point where I'm believing he's going to do something about it. And if it doesn't turn out the way I want it, I'm like, okay, Lord, I'm still moving. I'm still grinding. I'm still moving forward. I don't understand it. And like I said, we may not never know why. Why didn't he respond to this prayer and not to that? I don't know. I'm not God. But I know he's sovereign.
Yes, he is.
And I'm going to be intentional when I talk to him about it. So I'm going to be honest when I talk to him about it. And then there's times I tell people, I said, I go before him and I go, Lord, it's me again. I'm a chucklehead. I'm still friggin' wrestling with this, or I'm still wrestling with that. I don't know why. Or Lord, my eyes weren't on this. They were on something else. And, all those things that kind of hit you. And there's no excuse for it. There's just, we by nature are rebellious. Yeah. We're rebellious, Remember how I called Israel the stiff-necked and rebellious people? And I go, that's us. Yeah. That's us. I want it and I want it now. Well, that's not how he works. This is his. We're his. We belong to him. And then I've said before, I think when you break down the Lord's Prayer, I said I said, one of the hardest things to pray if we break down, Lord, our Father, how art thou, when we get into your will be done on earth as in heaven, we zip past that. When you stop for a minute, man, and you go, we're telling the Lord your will, not my will. See, I want things, bro, the way I want things. I know what I want.
Yeah.
I know what I want in my life, my marriage, in my checkbook. I know those things. But when you decide to yield and go, Lord, I still would like these things, but your will be done. I mean, man, think about Jesus. Think about Jesus for a minute. He's a fully God and fully man. And he goes before the Father and says, if you would, let this cup pass from me, but not my will, your will.
Amen. Thank you for sharing all that and for sharing your story. And I'm sure we could have dove into all type of other stories and things that went on. But could you close us out in a prayer?
Yeah, I would love to, man. I would love to, Father. Oh, Lord, I thank you for the opportunity to be with Omar tonight, Lord. Lord, I pray that the words of my mouth and his mouth were acceptable to you, Father God, that we gave you honor and praise. Lord, you're so good, Lord. I look back now when we talk often, Lord, when we're on these podcasts, get an opportunity to think back in my life and in every moment, in every second, in every tear and every laughter that you are there. And Father, I ask that whatever ears hear this, Lord, that it'll open their ears and their heart to you, Lord Jesus. I thank you for Omar, Lord. I ask that you bless him, bless his podcast, bless his family, Father God. I ask all this in the name above all names, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen, amen, brother. Hey, before we sign off, could you share I know you have a website, and could you also share the names of the books you've written, like the
Oh, yeah.
and maybe the podcast name as well?
Yeah, you can find the podcast under Spotify. It's under Leadership at the Front Line at Spotify. And then the books are all found on Barnes and Noble. The first book is Leadership at the Front Line, and it's called Lessons Learned about Loving, Leading, and Legacy from a Warrior Public Servant. The second book, which really Shelley and I wrote together, my wife and I co-wrote, it's called Raising Courageous Children in a Cowardly Culture. And it's the battle for the hearts and minds of our children. It's our story. It's not a how-to book. Actually, that was the third book. The second book was called The Eagle and the Seagulls, and it's a story I made up for my kids about how to face storms in your life. And we call it a wisdom story for children and adults. Again, all this is on Barnes and Noble. And was it last October? It might have been 2 years. We wrote. It was a children's series called Pop-Up's Amazing Bedtime Stories, and it's stories I made up for the kids. And it's the kids go spend the night at grandparents' house, and they spend the night in a spare room, and there's basically a wagon. And when they stay there, they play with the wagon. That wagon one book turns into an airplane, and literally the kids fly the airplane to see their cousins. Another one, it turns into a submarine. And then the third one, it turns into a rocket ship. And there's always a nemesis. There's always something that's trying to get them or something. But it's very light. It's imaginative. Right. So yeah, we did that. That was a lot of fun. But it's been, again, who would have thunk it? A guy that barely got out of high school. So, but it's been good. And like I said, God's been good to us. Just been fantastic.
Amen. Praise God for God, and like you mentioned earlier too, like your wife, like encouraging, pushing you, and holding down the fort.
Yeah, man.
We're at work and doing everything.
I wouldn't be here. Trust me, I would not be here.
Amen.
If not for that.
You know what, brother? I believe you have a website as well. If you want to,
I do. It's called. But it's frontlineleadershipgroup.com. That's frontlineleadershipgroup.com. And there's a couple of things. Some of the books are on there. There's some video of me on there. I got interviewed and a few other things, but that kind of spells out the things that I do and what the little company. It's me. It's really just me. So, but again, God's been good to us.
Amen. Yes, He has, man. Thank you for taking this time to spend with us. Thank you for sharing your story, brother. And appreciate you. God bless you, your marriage, your children, grandchildren,
brother. Same to you, man.
All the men that you're impacting, all the men that you're holding accountable, and leading with love. That's amazing.
That's it, man. That's true. At working at home, man. Don't lose your home.
That's right. But we're gonna get ready to wrap up. I want to thank my brother for joining us. Matthew 4:16 reads, "The people who sat in darkness have seen a great light, and upon those who sat in the region and the shadow of death, light has dawned." Alongside my brother Jim Capra, my name's Omar Calvillo, and we are Wrong to Strong.